I am not my disease. I am not my diagnosis. I am a person that received this diagnosis and will deal with it. I hate the idea of the cancer survivor, the cancer warrior. I mean, no one is a toothache warrior. No one is a broken arm survivor. But yeah, when it comes to cancer, we elevate it to be like this magical, mystical thing to overcome, when in fact, everyone has a chronic disease of some sort: arthritis, diabetes, sciatica, fill in the blank.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, plus social media is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and of course from UnderstandingAutoimmune.com. And it's my honor and pleasure to be with you here on another brand new episode. I've got my cup of tea here, so I hope you've got something good to sip on while you're watching us. I've got a great guest. Let me take a quick sip. Yeah, really good. You know, my chai tea again. If you watched the show before, you're like, yep, that's her favorite tea. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well, because we're going to talk today about what I call the Courage Club conversations. We're talking to people who have been through it and come out with new insights and new understandings. And this is a longtime dear friend who went through a debilitating disease, which let me read his bio to you, because maybe you've received a life-changing diagnosis and the fear and the uncertainty and frustration that come with that. And you might be wondering how to move forward. I know we talk about that a lot. There are many ways to move forward, and I like to have as many people on that have found their own resilience and grit and ability to keep moving forward regardless of their diagnosis. And Dan Janal is a longtime dear friend, and he has known that battle all too well. He was diagnosed with a rare and incurable form of cancer that compromised 85% of his bone marrow. That he was told by his doctor, and that you'd been dealt a bad hand. I don't know how many of you can relate to that. I remember hearing the scary statistics myself, going, oh yeah, thanks a lot, but I'm going to be on the better end of those stats. You just watch. And luckily, when you get that frame of mind, like myself and Dan and many of our other guests, you can make that happen too. Because instead of just giving up, he found a way to move forward. And after 4 months, he had a complete response to the treatment. Just 4 months. While the cancer will never fully go away, he's learned to reframe his life experiences and embrace life to the fullest extent and with brand new purpose. And today he's here to share his powerful story and offer new perspectives to bring us hope, health, and happiness on our journey too. Thanks, Dan, for being on the show.
Thanks, Sharon. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for that great introduction. It really, one of my friends actually worked for a company that makes cancer drugs, in fact, for my kind of cancer, and she said, oh, your life as you know it will never be the same, because she sees the bad side. And I was like, I'm rejecting that thought. I am not living that. I am not my disease. I am not my diagnosis. I am a person that received this diagnosis and will deal with it. I hate the idea of the cancer survivor, the cancer warrior. I mean, no one is a toothache warrior. No one is a broken arm survivor. But yeah, when it comes to cancer, we elevate it to be like this magical, mystical thing to overcome, when in fact, everyone has a chronic disease of some sort: arthritis, diabetes, sciatica, fill in the blank. And that's when I realized that when my doctors told me that it's incurable, but we can treat it, that's when I realized that the form of cancer I had is really a chronic disease. In fact, I'll share a story. I was talking to my cousin for our once a year catch-up phone call, and I told him I had cancer, and he said, oh, my wife has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I said, oh my God, when did that happen? And he said, oh, 16 years ago. I said, 16 years? He said, yeah, it's more like a chronic disease. And that's when it hit me. That's when I reframed the whole idea of cancer, because that's what I have. Not non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's called multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer. Apparently, it's pretty prevalent. It's the second largest form of blood cancer there is, behind leukemia. But 10 years ago, I would have been dead. They didn't have the drugs, didn't have the treatment, didn't have anything. In fact, one of my friend's wives had multiple myeloma 10 years ago, and it was a horrible ending. Let's just put it that way. But 10 years later, they have all these drugs, all these treatments, and all these great things going on. And my life expectancy is probably as good as it ever was. And it's not just me. I looked up some statistics, the American Cancer Society, cancercenter.org, and the number of, or the life expectancy of people with lots of different forms of cancer has increased tremendously over the last couple of years. Why? New drugs, new treatments, lots of research. And as long as that research keeps on going on, people like us have a lot of hope because things are just getting better. I live a very normal life thanks to the research that's done at universities, at drug companies, at governmental agencies, and whoever else is doing research around the world. They're all contributing to helping all of us live longer, happier, healthier lives. Now, I don't want to downplay the fact that some people get a cancer diagnosis one day and they're gone 3 days later. We all know people like that. But we also know people who had received cancer treatments 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago and are still alive. One of my friends from summer camp, she had breast cancer in her 20s. That was like 40 years ago. As bad as the treatment is today, as horrible, horrific, and painful that it is today, imagine how much worse it was 40 years ago. And yet she was able to lead a productive life, have a career, get married, have a daughter. Now she's a grandmother. And I spoke to her recently about this, and she said, it's amazing how you can live with so few organs in your body.
Oh my goodness. I've never thought of it quite that way. I would hope to maintain as many as possible.
Of course, but it's just a sign of hope that the human body and the human mind really wants to survive. And when I go in for my treatments and I talk to the nurses, they all say the same thing. People who have a positive attitude have better outcomes than people who have negative attitudes. So I think the first thing that anyone listening here has to say is not woe is me or why did this happen to me, but we can get through this. We can survive this. Put on a happy face to do things. I wear shirts that say life is good, the Life is Good brand. In fact, I was at the library the other day and the librarian saw me and she said, where did you get that sweatshirt? Or when did you get that sweatshirt? And I have to think, I said, it was October of 23 when I got my cancer diagnosis. And so it was around that. She said, cancer diagnosis? I said it so nonchalantly because it's a nonchalant part of my life. I am not my disease. And I think anyone who says, I am a cancer survivor, lives with that inside their head. They're always thinking about cancer. But I am
They're
not
also
my
thinking
disease.
about surviving, not about the next step. When I like to reframe it to thriver instead of
Survivor, okay.
survivor, because whenever we use these words like I'm a cancer survivor, yes, that's true. However, it plants this idea of survival. And whenever I hear the word survival, I think of rough and hard and drudgery and so. And so how can we reframe our words to meet what we're expecting out of life, how we want to enjoy our life, regardless of whether we have 1 day or 100 days or 100 years left? I think that's the critical thing that I found with people, whether it's a cancer diagnosis or an autoimmune diagnosis, is being able to see, yes, and that's not me. I've got so much more to give to the world, just like you do every day, Dan.
I don't even like to use the C word. I just call it the diagnosis.
There you go.
I talked to some people the other day. It's not my diagnosis, it's the diagnosis. That removes it even further from your body. It's just something there, which I thought was insightful. I think she was a psychologist who also practices NLP and hypnotherapy. So she knows the inner workings of the mind, and let's take advantage of that. And I love the fact you use the word reframing because that's my website, Reframing Cancer. That's the name of the book that I am writing, Reframing Cancer, the new perspectives on hope, healing, and happiness, because of this whole mindset that people have when they hear, oh, I have cancer. It's like, oh my God, you're going to die. No, cancer does not equal death. Cancer equals chronic condition. And as we said before, We all have something. Let's be kind to everyone because we don't know what they're going through. And also, what I realized from going to the Mayo Clinic every week for a year is that it can always be worse. It can always
Yeah.
be worse. So be grateful for what you have. I joined a support group online, and thank God my doctor found this or diagnosed this early. I had no symptoms, no outward symptoms. My blood work was off the charts. That's how they found this. But otherwise, I was perfectly happy and healthy. Other people find out that they have multiple myeloma when their bones break. So
Oh,
they're active, they're happy, they're healthy, they're hiking, and all of a sudden their leg breaks because the bone marrow just snaps. And those people are in a different situation, unfortunately. I work out. I go to Pilates 4 times a week. I do yoga. I lift weights. I changed my diet. I found that salads and vegetables are actually pretty good. They can actually taste good. And you can be pretty inventive with salads by putting all sorts of fruits and blueberries and strawberries in there. And believe it or not, I had a beet for the first time in my life. Like the first week, I got the diagnosis, not my diagnosis, the diagnosis, and it was sprinkled with quinoa, and it wasn't half bad.
I want to circle back to one of the things you said about that question of reframing, that question of why me, or how did I get here? And then I think it's an important question just to examine very quickly, because I don't want to make it sound like we just skipped over that. When I got my autoimmune diagnosis, I had to look at, okay, what was I doing in my previous lifestyle that caused the disruption, the breakdown, whatever we want to call it. And I realized as back then I was a road warrior on the road giving teachings all around the world for 200 plus days a year, thinking a salad at the airport was healthy. And then all of a sudden, with my diagnosis, my life came to a screeching halt because of the major rash all over my body. And it was an intense set of 6 months of healing all of that. And I did have to spend time like, okay, obviously my body's saying, Sharon, you need to take better care of it and unwind how you got here. And then after that, it's not about blaming or shaming. It's just, okay, I know better now, so I'm going to do better now.
Yeah, I agree completely. In fact, one of the chapters in my book is called Your Body is Your Enemy.
Oh my
And that's a
goodness.
scary thing because think about it. After the age 35, everything starts to break down. I didn't do anything to get my cancer, and there was nothing I could have done to prevent my cancer, unlike you. Unhealthy lifestyle, of course, leads to problems. I just got this. There's no rhyme or reason. They don't know how anyone who has multiple myeloma gets it or how to cure it, but they can maintain it. So I realized that I can have a better outcome if I took better care of my body because things break down. When I was younger, I lifted 20-pound dumbbells. I went back to my dumbbell set and I picked up the 20-pounders. I was like, I can't lift these. So I went to the 15-pounders and I lifted them. And about after a couple of weeks, my right arm could start to lift the 20-pounder. And in another few days, my right arm did. And a few weeks after that, my left arm did. And I was doing 20-pounders. And my wife and I took a road trip. And we were on the road for 12 hours. We checked into a La Quinta, and I was like antsy from sitting in the car for 12 hours. And I said, I'm just going to go down to the weight room and lift some weights and get some of this energy out and, just get some this negative energy out of me. And I went over to the weight rack and I picked up these weights and I started lifting them. I said, they feel a little bit heavier than normal, but I guess it's because I've just been sitting in the car for 12 hours. I'm just creaky. I did my sets and I put them back. They were 25-pounders which,
Wow.
which only goes to show that your body is also your friend. It can rehabilitate. So all the natural things that happen to your body of losing muscle tone, losing strength, those can be built up. I mean, there's scientific studies all over the place. People in their 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90-year-old women can start lifting 10-pound weights, maybe not starting with that, but they can build up to it and increase their muscle mass. So your body's your enemy, but your body is also your friend.
And I think you bring up a good point. During my diagnosis, one of the things that I was blaming every little creak or owie, whatever, on my diagnosis. And I read the startling statistic. I'm going to paraphrase it, can't remember it exactly, but by age 35, you've lost like 10% of your muscle mass. And by
Yep.
50 or something, it's like 50%. Anyway, it was shocking that by the time you reach retirement, you've lost a fair amount of your muscle mass, which would have happened naturally regardless of diagnosis or not, unless there was some intervention, of course, like you going to the gym lifting weights. And I remember I was talking to my rheumatologist about 5 years into the diagnosis, and I was complaining about a couple of things like disrupted sleep, and I'm blaming the diagnosis. And although I didn't want to hear this, she gently said, Sharon, that's more likely menopause. And it was interesting for me. I needed to hear that. I didn't really want to hear that. But what it brought up to me was all your creaks and owies are not just your diagnosis. There are natural parts of the cycle of life that could be causing some symptoms too. And I found that fascinating, was like, oh, there was this aha moment of, oh, you are absolutely right. Not everything is related to the diagnosis.
True, but it's amazing how many things we have to deal with that are the side effects of the diagnosis and the treatments. Because I don't want to present this picture of, oh, gee, Dan, he's 100% perfect and whatever. No, I have insomnia. I have neuropathy. My toes are numb. I can't pronounce the word.
Neuropathy.
Neuropathy. Thank you. I get irritable sometimes, my wife tells me. I think I'm wonderful, but I'll take her word for that. And there are times when middle of the afternoon, I'm taking a nap. I just can't keep awake anymore. There are things that go on, which is why I try to maintain a healthy diet as well. I was eating hamburgers and hot dogs and all sorts of horrible stuff. And in fact, my reward for going to Maya was eating all these little bags of chips on the way back home and things like that. And that I endured that. So I get to reward myself with these chips. But I've gotten to the point now where if it comes in a box, I don't eat it. Because if it's in a box, it has preservatives, has all these chemicals. What everyone on this call said, look at the ingredients, read the ingredients, blah, blah. If you have to read the ingredients in a box, there are preservatives in there and all sorts of weird things. So don't even bother reading the box anymore. Just don't eat the box. Fruits, vegetables. Okay, Cheerios come in a box. What am I going to do? Trader Joe's shredded wheat has no sugar and is 100% natural. It's in a box. So there are some exceptions. And I'm not perfect. I'll eat Ben and Jerry's ice cream, but I don't really want to eat sugar. But I'm human and we're all human. And I wish someone would do a study of people who follow the regimen perfectly on one side, people who do nothing on the other side, and people who mix it up in the middle to see which group performs better on any form of autoimmune or cancer diagnosis. Because you got to eat healthy. There's no question. My cardiologist says that, eat the Mediterranean diet. In fact, this is a funny story. We just came back from a vacation in Italy, and we took a food tour throughout Venice. And the food was not great. There were a lot of sardines, a lot of anchovies, a lot of olives. And we said, why is this? And she said, back in the Middle Ages, people wanted to drink a lot. And they found that these kinds of foods coated the stomach so they could drink a lot. So they weren't eating for pleasure or like we would do, or, oh, this is high, wonderful food. This is, gee, if I have this olive, I can have another beer and stay up longer with my buddies and I won't get drunk. That's part of the Mediterranean diet that's unknown.
Oh, I did not know that. We had Dr. Gerlovich on recently, and a digestive expert. And what was fascinating, one of the things she said to me about the foods in boxes is that a lot of times you'll see this little statement about daily average or daily dose type of thing. She said, no one takes into account that, say you eat that box 3 times. So maybe it says it's 50% of the daily allowance of this preservative or something like that, or the known safety amount of this preservative. If you eat that box 4 times, you're already way past the acknowledgement of how much is already safe for ingestion. And I had never thought about that, because you just read that and you're like, oh, okay, I'll just splurge this time on that because I feel like that. I feel like something salty or something like that. And then I realized a lot of these chemicals that are added are considered safe at a certain dosage, but how many times are you dosing yourself that day? So
You're absolutely right. I was in Costco just yesterday, and the very first boxes of things they were showing was vitamin D3. And I take vitamin D3. I think it's for the bones, but I take 1,000 whatever's a day, one pill, 1,000. So I looked at their dosage was 5,000. And I looked at the back and it was like 700 times the normal daily amount needed. And you have to wonder, will that do more harm than good if you're overdosing by that amount? Because my doctor said 1,000, and I found one brand that was 1,000. It was not a problem, but Costco is selling one for 5,000.
there are a
So
lot
you
of
have to
people
be careful about
deficient.
that.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
really good to now read those labels because there are a lot of people deficient in vitamin D in our sedentary indoor lifestyle these days. And I do know that people do take large doses to get their blood amount when they do the blood test up to that number, but then you don't continue to take that massive amount. It's interesting that they would put that out there for, I'll say, generic use instead. And it's great that you read the label. It's a fantastic reminder for us. Read the labels because you cannot make the assumption that all of this is going to be exactly like that brand. They're not. But I do know that 5,000 is common when you've got low vitamin D and your doctor prescribes you to get it up there fast. I do know that people sometimes do those heavy doses to get their blood levels up fast. There's all sorts of fantastic studies on vitamin D, and it's really good for the immune system too. And a lot of us don't get enough sun to get out there and have our own bodies make our vitamin D. But thank you
Mhm.
for reminding us, read the labels because you know, in our fast-paced lifestyle, it's too easy just to, oh, I need more of that, grab it and go. And it brings up a point that I had a product I had used before lots of times. I have some food allergies and it had been safe in my world prior. And I just grabbed it again one day and I had a reaction. I looked at the label and they had changed the configuration.
Wow.
And there was nothing like new and improved or nothing. It looked like the same old box. But I was said to myself, okay, either I am now allergic to some ingredient in this container or, but no, they had changed uh, in my mind, they had cheapened the ingredients, but who knows? That was my feeling about it.
That can definitely happen. On the flip side, I take magnesium glycinate, which again is over the counter, and it was for a certain dosage amount. And I found one brand that worked. Then I went to get a refill, and I picked up this bottle, and I realized that it was like half the dosage. So you need to take two of them, which would mean that the price just doubled because you need two instead of one, and who wants to take another pill? So I did find the right brand that had the right dosage, or near, actually, it was near the right dosage amount. Instead of like say 500, it was 460. So I was like, okay, I can figure that. I can live with that. But yeah, read the labels for that. It's important.
I think the one thing it's taught me too is that many times doctors will tell you, like in your case and mine, the worst case statistics. And I was raised in a generation that believed in white coat authority.
Mhm.
Whatever they said must be correct. What I found, what most of them don't do it from malicious places, but A, they want you to be informed. And B, it's like the information is correct for most people, but that doesn't mean it's correct for you. Everybody's body reacts so differently to from their previous lifestyle to their ethnicity to backgrounds to all sorts of things, their job, their work, their sleep patterns. And I always like to put myself in that place of thank you for the information and then go find what works for me. And sometimes I found that hard with medical professionals. They get very attached and surprised to their comments and their feelings about things and their prescriptions about things, and really don't leave room for the nuance that each of us carries, the ability to heal ourselves, our drive, our resilience, our grit, all sorts of things, our lifestyle, and our ability to adapt and change to that as well.
Oh, I agree completely. I think you open up the door to a whole new fascinating series of discussions. Let's see how much time we can cover all this. And I agree with you. I'm from the generation, whatever the doctor says is right. In fact, my father was a podiatrist. So, in fact, When I was growing up, I thought, gee, why would you become like a real doctor, like a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon? Why feet? That seems so pedestrian, pardon the pun. Now that I have neuropathy and I see people in wheelchairs and they can't walk, you're like, damn, the feet are really important.
Which brings me back about to that part where we were talking about missing organs. I'm like, I kind of attached to all of mine right now.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of when I got the initial diagnosis from the doctor, and they say you have cancer. And after that, you don't hear what they say
Yeah.
because you're thinking, your mind is saying, oh my God, cancer equals death. Remember that cancer equals death? No, cancer equals chronic condition. But back then it was cancer equals death. Oh my God. You do the whole Kubler-Ross thing, like how much time do I have? What do I need to do? Okay. And your first questions are like, what are the statistics? They said, well, you probably have about 5 years. There's certain comorbidities. So if you have diabetes or a heart condition, probably less. If you smoke, probably less time. If you have active and healthy and eat right, you probably have a little bit more time. So you're playing the odds, which is a horrible way to get the diagnosis. Wouldn't it be nicer if they said something like this? Hi, we got the results of your lab work back. And the good news is we can treat what you have. You have something, it's never going to go away, but we have drugs, we have treatments, we have remedies, we have things. We can put you on this program and we can maintain your lifestyle as it is. You might have to go to the clinic once a week. You might have to take some drugs every day, some pills, but you're not going to lose your hair. You can maintain a pretty much active lifestyle for the most part. How does that sound? Okay, I can live with that. Oh, and by the way, and just in case you're wondering, you have a disease that is under the category that we call cancer. Oh my God, I have cancer. We can control it. Remember, we can control it. You'd be happy, take these drugs, you'll maintain good lifestyle. Oh, okay, thanks, doc. I can live with this.
Until you
Why
tell
can't
your
they say
friends.
something like that?
Until
Excuse
you
me?
tell until you tell your friends, because I'm thinking about this. I related to when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
You hear every horror pregnancy story. Very rarely women will tell you, oh, it was a breeze. They handed me this delightful baby, blah, blah. You hear every horror story. And what I found out with my autoimmune condition, now many people couldn't relate to my condition, but I heard every horror cancer story or every other chronic condition horror story as they're trying to relate instead of telling me, oh, tell me more about it, or just trying to connect with you instead of making it relatable because either they or someone in their family had cancer and passed away. That's not helpful.
Yeah, people don't know what to say or do. And I'd put myself in that category too, because when I heard such certain friends or friends of friends had cancer, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't reach out. I didn't pick up the phone. I was afraid of saying something stupid, something wrong. I didn't visit in the hospitals, which is not the right thing. One of my friend's fathers died of, it might have been cancer, it doesn't matter where he died from. But he specifically said, don't tell any of my relatives about it because I don't want them to worry, which is a generation beyond us. And maybe people today are saying that too, but certainly greatest generation, the elders were, that's definitely what they were thinking. So for the months that he was passing, he only saw his son and his daughter. And then one day he died. And my friend called up all the relatives and said that Harold is dead. I said, oh my God, what happened? It seems so sudden. Oh, he had cancer and it was like 6 months. Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't you tell us? I didn't want us to know. We could have come over. We could have sympathized. We could have relived old times. We could have cheered him up. We could have spared you the hours of you sitting by the bedside and giving you a break to just go out and yell and scream or have a life or say our goodbyes. And I thought about that. I said, man, he was doing it for what he thought were the right reasons. But in reality, he was denying everyone else the chance to say, I love you. And wouldn't that be a nice way to end your life, to have all of your friends and relatives come by one last time and relive all the great things and say, I love you?
Only if we could train them not to tell us all the horror stories and the grisly things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see, I love the concept, Dan, but I also could see as a family member, here are the 10 rules.
There you go.
No grisly horror stories.
Yeah, yeah. We all need to be trained. You go to a funeral, no one knows what to say. Oh, I know how you feel. No, you don't know how I feel. But no one knows what to say, so they think that's what you should say, and it's no one knows the right thing to say. So maybe we need an etiquette expert to come up with 10 sure stock fire phrases. If you need anything, let me know. Actually, I've read somewhere that's not a good thing to say because it puts the onus on the person to say, what do I need? You can step in a quicksand without even realizing it. So we need to come up to terms with the right things to say and the wrong things to say. And I think just by discussing it like this, we're taking a step in the right direction.
Just the other day, I had lunch with a dear friend whose husband passed 5 years ago. And their wedding anniversary was coming up. I've known her my long, long time, decades, and they'd been together decades. And I finally at lunch, I said, I have to bring this up. I want to acknowledge the wedding anniversary because I know you guys' true love story. Is it okay if I bring it up? Can I send you a little heart text on that day? I just don't know. I don't want to bring up bad things that you're just going to be weeping all day. She said, no, I really want to know that. I would really like to be acknowledged that, yes, in my heart, he's still with me. And
Yeah.
it was a very uncomfortable conversation because I thought, okay, I'd rather bring it up now than on the day. But I still felt very awkward. Okay, am I opening up a whole heartbreak now, just bringing it up? But in this case, she was very grateful, and I did send her the little heart emojis on the day, and all is good. But I think having the courage to say, hey, look, I don't know, and I don't want to hurt you when I say this, but I would love to acknowledge something. I would love to be involved if I can help in any way. And that coming from that place of vulnerability, I think was helpful in my case to get past that idea of, oh my gosh, I don't want to have the flood of tears happening because I brought that memory back into our lovely time of having lunch together. So it's a real tender thing to try and judge who wants to hear what at when.
Yeah, and the thing about people is that we all are mind readers and we all are horrible mind readers because we assume they're going to react a certain way. And I love the fact that you actually asked her and found out what she found acceptable and you responded perfectly, which brings
Although
up,
it was
yeah,
scary.
of
I mean,
course.
I sat there a good half hour of the meal running through my head. I want to bring this up before the day. But yeah, when I finally had the courage to say it out loud, I just want Courage Club community to know it wasn't that easy, but it was well received. And just to acknowledge, sometimes you just have to brace yourself and give it a go.
Yeah, it's amazing. Difficult questions can sometimes be seen as negative or intrusive. I was a daily newspaper reporter, and the very first story that I was sent out on was a double suicide homicide in with these old people who basically took pills and killed themselves. And their adult son found them several days later. And I had to interview him, like, how do you feel? That's the standard reporter question. Oh my God, here he is finding out that his parents are dead. And I'm this young kid, 21-year-old newspaper reporter saying, how do you feel? And I felt stupid asking it for such an intrusive question at such a vulnerable time. But the result astounded me. He wanted to tell his story. He wanted to tell his parents' story. He wanted to put them in a good light. He wanted to get things off his chest. So by asking that question, he found it very liberating. So while we're beating ourselves up saying, oh my God, if I ask this, we could be intrusive, we could be horrible, this could be seen negatively, the other person might actually see it as a relief to be able to share their story. So you have to walk tenderly. I'll agree with you because you don't know how they're going to react. But for some people, you're letting them express themselves, which they want to do. So you're being very empowering for them.
And I want to put the asterisk on that in neither case did we share our horror gutsy story. It was listening that's just the key part that I think a lot of people just want to be heard. They don't want to be lectured. They don't want to hear a similar horror story. really doesn't matter whether you can relate or not. I cannot relate to Dan's cancer diagnosis, but I can empathize and I can be supported, et cetera, et cetera. But I would never presuppose to say, Dan, I know how you feel, because
Mhm.
I've never had that condition and he's never had my condition. And so I think that's the critical point, is what I call exquisite listening, is just sometimes just holding the space for someone to tell their story is very healing.
I think that's a really important point. I hadn't really thought about that because I don't know if it's a male female thing, but men will tell their stories. So as a way of bonding, we think we're bonding. I don't know if women do as well, or is it you just said, it's, I don't want to hear your story. I want a space where I can tell my story and just be heard. And I don't know if it depends on the person or if it's an age thing or a generational thing or a sex thing. But I think it's something that really needs to be explored to say, okay, you went through this, I went through this, we can get through this together. And because we have a shared story, with difference, of course, I have this, you have this, we can work this out together. Or if it's seen as, I want to be listened to, shut up. And that's fine. I want to bring up another point is, if we have time, is the role of the caregiver. Everyone puts all the hero of the story is the person with the disease, but the caregivers go through so much hell that we don't acknowledge. And I want to think that everyone here who has a condition should really take some time out to say thank you to the person who's watching over them, because it is a big thing. I was on a group call the other day, and one woman was saying that she has to watch over her husband 24/7. That's what the doctors told her because he was in a very serious situation. And she said, I couldn't go to the bathroom. I was afraid to take a shower. What if I left him alone for 5 minutes and something happened? I'd feel guilty. There's the guilt, there's the pain, the pressure. They're doing the shopping, they're doing the cleaning. Who knows what kind of bodily fluids they're cleaning from you as well, if they are. That's gross and disgusting. And they rarely get acknowledged for that. I remember my mother was a caregiver for my uncle. She had to fight with doctors and insurance companies. And anyone who's been on the line with an insurance company knows what hell that is and what kind of stress that puts on your body. Take a moment to be kind to your caregiver, because they're going through a whole different set of pain that they did not sign up for.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said, everything's on a bell curve. Even a caregiver who's not as intimately involved as that, say a spouse or a loved one who is there for you, maybe runs you to the doctor appointments or even just listens to you. But sometimes I know during my healing process, their concern I took as intrusive. I'm okay. Back off. I'm okay. I don't at that moment. And then I had to sit, and I'm not perfect at this. I'm not saying that, although it was a realization where, look, I have to, as the person, my loved one doesn't know what I'm going through day in and day out, when I'm good, when I'm not good, all of that. And they're concerned, they're scared. They don't want to lose me. They don't want to see me get any more debilitated. But how much is okay enough to do to help me without being intrusive and taking away my autonomy? Oh my goodness, Dan, we could go on and on with all of these ideas about ways that we communicate to each other what's going on in our worlds.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I just love the idea to go back to it, of the listening. Some people just want to be listened to and vent and get things off your chest and just say, what would the proper response be to that? I hear you, or I don't know. What do you think? What
I
would you say to someone?
I love the vulnerability of that. Sometimes just nodding helps. Sometimes I
Hmm.
have no idea what to say. And I feel like if I'd say, what would you like me to say? Seems maybe they don't even know what they would like to say. They just wanted to be heard. I've
Mhm.
had people say that to me and I felt dismissed. What would you like me to say? Maybe it was their
Ooh,
tone,
wow.
the pacing or
Mhm.
whatever, where it's like dismissive. But that for me, the idea of just sometimes nodding your head is all it is. Okay, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. We have a dear friend who, Dr. Shawn Duperrin, who's been on the show, and she's the founder of Project Forgive. She has this wonderful process called the apology you'll never receive. And it's a way for a stand-in to hear the story, what needs to be apologized for. And it is a script and a process you can go through. You can find it at projectforgive.org. But what I love about that idea of a process, though, where you can have that conversation. You're listening very carefully. And maybe as the story begins, that's where you pre-frame it. Okay, I do want to hear your story. What would be most helpful to you from me before I hear the story? Because it's by the time I'm at the end of my story, any little thing somebody says could be taken so many different ways. But if I know what that person needs from me, they just need me to nod my head, they need me to hold their hand, they need me to sit side by side, or they need me to role play that person who transgressed them, whatever it is. So I guess what I'm learning as I get older is speak up and ask those difficult questions early.
That's a great idea. It really pre-frames the entire conversation so the person can tell their story and get the kind of feedback and support that they want, if they know what they want. It helps you from stepping in the quicksand and saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And I remember working with some coaches now, and I would vent or whatever, and they would do what you just said. They nod or they go and not offer any kind of feedback or whatever. And I thought, shouldn't they be saying something? Shouldn't they be telling me what to do? And it wasn't that kind of coaching. And if I needed that kind of coaching, I should have said, so what should I do? What would you do? What are the logical next steps? But generally speaking, with that coach, I used him for venting, and it was great.
People just need a thinking partner. That's what I call it. They're thinking out loud. They need to think out loud and they need someone to, a thinking partner.
That's a great way to put it. I love it. So now I wasn't venting, I was thinking.
You're thinking out
Uh,
loud.
and that's where all the great ideas come from in the shower at 3 in the morning. Yeah, your subconscious kicks in and it just works great. Yeah.
And bringing this to a different place is I had a mammogram and they had found something suspicious. Thank heavens it turned out to be nothing. But what annoyed me no end was, first off, this particular care center, everything was pink. I'm like, okay, this is a bit much. Now, people like pink, but everything was pink. And I was like, okay, Sharon, that's just you. Your style is not pink. Okay. But when they found this something suspicious that they wanted to do a few more tests on, and like I said, luckily it turned out to be nothing. They take me in the room. She leans forward. Oh, I'm in a rocking chair too. And she's in a rocking chair. And they lean forward and they hold my hand. Now, I never gave in my mind, I'm allowing it to happen, but I'm also part of me going, I never gave you permission to do that. There's this part of me was like, but what it did was it heightened my, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? And then they proceeded to tell me and acted as if I was incapable. Should we call someone? Do you need, if someone had pre-framed, like, how would you like to get news? Which I'm a just tell me kind of person, just not, doesn't have to do with gender. It's just, I'm a just tell me kind of person. And I'm thinking if you could somehow pre-frame, okay, if we do need to give you more news, how do you like it? And I would have said, not in a rocking chair, not in a pink room, and nobody holding my hand.
Yeah, it's a infantilism that healthcare sometimes puts on people. I remember a couple of years ago, I was going to get an orthotic for my shoe. No big deal. And the receptionist said, how are we feeling today, young man? And we're like, ooh,
Unless
nothing
she
is
was
worse than calling someone,
102.
yeah, nothing's worse than calling someone young man. It says you're old. That's what you hear. And I don't know why they say that because they have to know that this is just the wrong thing to say. But I'm sure she said it 50 times a day, every day for the last umpteen years that she's been working there. But how are we feeling? It's just crazy, just absolutely crazy. People who are in healthcare don't know how to talk to people, which is a shame.
It is. Dan, we're just down to the last 3 or 4 minutes. Tell us more about your upcoming book. We'll have you on when it launches. I'm really excited to read the first draft. And so tell us more about how people can get a hold of you as well.
Cool, thank you. I have a website built already, even though the book isn't out. And on the website, there's a little form you can fill out to say, keep me informed of when you have a new blog post or when the book comes out. And the site is reframingcancer.com. com. And the name of the book is Reframing Cancer, because that's what you do in your brand things. It's all consistent. And the subtitle is New Perspectives on Hope, Healing, and Happiness. And every couple of days, I post another blog post, which will be another chapter in the book. They're short chapters. They're easy, bite-sized things to read, things that, frankly, we're talking about here are little anecdotes. But at the end of each anecdote, I have a question for consideration that puts the focus back on you, because my story is interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting as your story to you. So I want to put the things back to people so they can realize, they can say, okay, the doctor said this to Dan. How would I have preferred the doctor tell me that I had my diagnosis? Or I might have a blog post or a chapter on internal talk. What do you say to yourself? What's your internal dialogue? And my internal dialogue is, everything works out well for me. It always has. I mean, we all have struggles. I've had struggles, whatever. In the end, everything works out well for me. What's your internal message? So that would be at the end of that blog post or that chapter. So life sucks. Okay. You have to have a reframe there. God watches out for me, or I have a support system, or what it makes people aware of what's going on in their lives. I have that sweatshirt, life is good. I have another t-shirt that I bought from the Mayo Clinic that says, the comeback is stronger than the setback. So what clothing do you wear that inspires you to lead a more positive looking life? And remember, I come from New York. How you doing? Not so bad. That's the standard response. It's a negative kind of outlook from the very, very beginning. So I had to really retrain myself over the years to be more positive, and that self-talk is part of it. So every chapter, small chapters, very readable, 250, 500 words, goes through another part of our lives, some things we talked about here, and relate back to you. What does this mean to you? How would you deal with this situation? What do you say to yourself? What do you wear? How do you reframe going to the doctor's appointment? I had an hour and a half drive to go to Mayo Clinic every Monday for a year, and I listened to motivational tapes on my car radio. So it was like an hour and a half of positivity going down there and an hour and a half of positivity coming back. It was like a safe space. It was like, this is really nice. I like my Mondays, even though I'm getting injected stuff in my body and they're taking blood out of here and whatever. But, oh, I get to listen to all this great inspirational stuff. So it's fine. And by the way, the Mayo Clinic, the gold standard. You walk in there, it's like going to an art museum and getting your infusions and your injections. I discovered they have these Andy Warhols lining the lobby, going to the blood draw center. Oh my God, these things are worth millions of dollars. And we can see them, they're behind glass, and wow. So what is your environment like? How can you improve your environment? So anyway, so that's what the book is about. It's motivational, it's inspirational, it's helpful. It's things like, what to eat, what not to eat. Here's a little tip. You know how doctors can figure out where the cancer is in your body? Sugar. They infuse you with a sugar solution for about half an hour. They put something in your veins and this thing drips down into your veins. It's a sugar solution. They put you in this tube of some sort and they take all these pictures. And wherever the cancer is, the sugar attaches and lights up. So they have this X-ray, so to speak, this picture of looks like a Christmas tree with all the cancer points lit up. It's, oh my God. And you say,
no idea.
And when I tell that story to, they said, I didn't know that. And I respond by saying, so do you want another Twinkie?
Yeah.
And so it's a fun book. I want to bring out the fun and the joy of this, that again, cancer is not a death sentence. Cancer is a chronic condition that we can deal with and move on with our lives. So we're not a victim. We have agency. We have empowerment because we're not a survivor. We just have a diagnosis that can be dealt with. I'm also on Substack with Reframing Cancer, Substack has a lot of great articles by other people like me and even doctors who are going through this and want to hear people's stories. And they're great stories and inspiration and hope and perspectives that if you don't belong to a support group, Substack can have a lot of good things about cancer. I'm sure other diseases as well that give you hope and inspiration for leading a good life. And of course, the final thought here is my three main points, of course, are that cancer is not a death sentence, it's a chronic condition. And the three subpoints, would be that everyone's got something, so be kind. Because even if you can't see it, someone parks in the handicap spot and they look perfectly normal, they could be having all sorts of hell inside their bodies. So be kind. And the second key point is that it can always be worse. So no matter what you have, it can always be worse. So be grateful for what you have. And the third is that you're being saved for a reason. There's a reason why you have this new insights, why you're surviving. So what can you do to make the most of it? And for me, it's to help other people realize that their best days could be ahead of them because they can do all sorts of things that they never thought possible before. For me, I never thought of myself as someone being on the inspirational path, but here I am because I have a good story to tell and good insights that haven't been shared that can really help people get over the hump and lead a very productive, normal, happy, healthy life for themselves, their families, and their communities.
I'm really looking forward to the book. And everyone, Dan is actually an award-winning author. We didn't have that in his bio or his intro, but a fantastic, well-known marketing expert and PR expert as well. So I'm really looking forward to the upcoming book. And when it comes out, Dan, we'll have you back on. We could show the cover and go through chapter by chapter. So everyone, we got to leave now because we're up against the clock, but have a great week, whatever your adventures. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your experience and your insights and the ideas about how we can communicate with people and actually thrive regardless of our diagnosis. So as I said, have a great week, whatever your adventures, and I'll join you next week, same place. See you soon.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, is for educational purposes only. This is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.